In the heart of a small Midwestern town in Minneapolis, in the winter of 1987, life seemed simple on the surface. Neighbors shoveled snow from driveways, kids built snowmen, and the sky wore a blanket of stars over a sleepy suburb. But sometimes beneath the surface of even the most ordinary lives lurks something darker. Something waiting, watching. A young couple, Daniel and Lydia, lived in a small town house where things had started seemingly perfect. Daniel's little brother Eli also came visiting sometimes. Things seemed so calm and perfect in the early years of their marriage. But soon into the marriage, Lydia started noticing some unsettling changes from her Daniel. One day, Daniel had been working for long hours in his garage. After he was done working in his garage for the day, Daniel strides through the door, cheeks rosy, messy curls streaked with grease from hours spent in the garage. It's late, Lydia thinks, noticing the faint metallic smell clinging to him. His laugh echoes in the room as he yanks off his shirt on his way upstairs. A moment later, the water runs. His brother Eli lingers, grabbing a snack from the fridge, his boots still tracking mud on the floor. Lydia thinks to herself,
Daniel wasn't like his elder brother or his family. At least I believed he wasn't. I chose carefully when I married him, careful to avoid the curse that haunted so many others. The same curse I was born with.
or so Lydia thinks. Suddenly a growing fear. Lydia knew this curse all so well because it haunted her from when she was born. She lived with it all her life till she was an adult. Her parents will uncontrollably fight and destroy things around the house, and her father will sometimes beat her mum to a pulp in fits of boiling red-hot rage and uncontrollable anger. She thought she was done with it by the time she married Daniel, but she didn't know she was getting married to someone who had this curse even worse than her parents, a monster even worse than her father. But there was a tiny difference, the only difference being that Daniel only hid it. He had been very cautious and sneaky enough to hide this from Lydia all the first few years of their dating, till after their marriage. He had some meds which he took on occasion, but he had lied to Lydia that these meds and the injection he occasionally took were for a certain, not so harmful health condition, which needed him to inject himself from time to time just to keep it under some form of control in order not to spread. And well, he looked healthy all these years, acted healthy all these years. Therefore, Lydia had no single reason to suspect anything was wrong other than the seemingly harmless condition which he had already told her about. And so they continued, living and going about their lives all fine and calm. Well, all that till he was no longer able to control the facade anymore. And the look on his face when he entered the house after working in the garage spoke volumes to Lydia, who knew this look all so well. Lydia's mind flashes back briefly to her childhood in the early 70s, where she will hide in a closet as her parents, snarling and transformed, rage and ferocious bloodbath. The curse isn't kind to anyone, but for those born with it, there is some measure of control. With discipline and daily injections, they could suppress it. But for those who choose the curse, there's no going back, no suppressing it, it consumes them. Daniel apparently was one of those people who allowed this curse consume them, only choosing to pretend for the first few years when he got to know Lydia. Daniel had played innocent and calm all those years. As a matter of fact, all of Lydia's friends had kept on praising him when they met him, saying how he was the best guy they had ever met to date Lydia since they had known her date anyone. But at this point, his real self had started showing, and his real self had started coming out. Things had come to a point where Daniel had chosen not to suppress it anymore, lying to himself that he had everything under control and that he was a new man since after he married Lydia. Even though he had started to hear those horrific and taunting voices in his head to become violent again. You see, Daniel had been working all day in the garage, and when he was done, he decided to take a shower. So he took off his shirt and threw it in the core of the living room, threw his muddy boots to the side, and took off his stockings as he walked upstairs to go take a shower. But something had caught Lydia's attention when she looked at him as he walked in. Lydia noticed the look on his face as he walked past her while she read her book in the living room. At a first glance, she had decided to ignore, saying to herself that the look on his face must have come from the stress and tiredness from working all day on his car in the chilling cold in his garage. therefore saying to herself that he could be a bit cranky or simply exhausted. But she did take note of it because she knew that sudden change in look all so well. Daniel was done with the shower and walked out towards his room, but for a second he stared down at Lydia, sending cold shivers down her spine. Even though she had been reading a book, she felt the eyes on her. You know, that feeling you get when you know someone is staring at you, even without looking at the person, his eyes burning red and bloodshot, his gaze piercing through her soul. So she looks up and turns her head around in the direction of the oncoming Daniel. Lydia watches Daniel emerge from the shower. He looks different, bloated, oddly full. He pats his stomach with a grin. Gaining weight, he jokes to Eli, his brother, with a sharp laughter. Immediately, Lydia's mind starts to race. She thinks to herself,
The room suddenly feels colder. Something is off. My instincts stirred, primal and alert. I hadn't been wrong before. Not when my parents suddenly turned, not when my siblings did. And now that feeling clawed at me again. What am I supposed to do now if things are turning exactly as I think? I can't allow fear take over me. I must be ready to act and defend myself.
The mood grows darker. Lydia decides to go upstairs to her room simply to avoid being in his path and to see if his demeanor calms down a bit, with her and anyone else out of his way. Then she prepares to go take a shower. As soon as she walks out of her room and toward the shower, Daniel suddenly blocks her path, his movements subtle, yet calculated. The tension tightens in the house immediately. Lydia looks at him straight in his eyes as if to ask what he was doing that for, as if to tell him to move out the way. She makes a motion by moving her head and eyes to the side, as if to express that he was standing in her way and she needed to get into a shower. Daniel asks, "What's wrong?" His voice is sweet and calm as if to ease Lydia's fears. But Lydia didn't answer. Her eyes immediately darted to the fireplace poker, to the door, anywhere that wasn't him. Her pulse raced. Am I overthinking? She asks herself. Or am I too late? She thinks as her heart keeps racing. Just a second later, Daniel's form begins to shift. The color of his face starting to change to blood red. All the veins on his face and neck beginning to swell. His jaws clenching, his fists starting to clench. His breath starting to increase, almost growling, like an hungry wild animal ready to attack and pounce to devour its prey. Lydia's worst fears materialized before her eyes.
I married a man who I thought would never betray me, but he chose this. He chose the curse, knowing everything I endured. And now, he was no longer a man. He chose to stop taking his meds and control injections, knowing fully well the outcomes of doing this. And he has hid this from me our entire time dating and until years after our marriage. What am I to do now? Think fast, Lydia. Think fast.
Chaos ensues. Lydia tries to run, but Daniel's monstrous form is faster. He lunges at her, stretching his hands to grab her, tearing her sweater. He punches her so hard when he was able to corner her by the couch. She falls to the floor, hits her head on the couch armrest, and tries to crawl her way to the side stool where there was a flower vase. Crawling painfully with a daze, she was able to grab the vase. She smashes the vase across his back and scrambles to the kitchen, her screams morphing almost into roars. As she struggles and tries to escape, Lydia thinks to herself amidst the chaos. I spent my childhood running from monsters, she says. I knew the rhythm of the chase, the weight of fear, but I never imagined I'd be running from my husband. Lydia hurls dishes at Daniel, shattering them against his skull. Blood trickles down his face as he growls. She grabs a drawer and slams it into him, momentarily stunning him. But it's not enough. He corners her by the dining room door. He stretches his hands to grab her again, then suddenly saying calmly to Lydia, Daniel pleads, Lydia, listen to me. I didn't mean for this to happen. But Lydia interrupts, her voice trembling. You chose this. You knew what it meant, and you chose it anyway. Daniel shifts again, his monstrous form returning with every word that he heard Lydia speak. This time, there's no reasoning left in him. He was able to corner her again, grab her by her hair. Then he tried to bite her, using his teeth to clamp down on Lydia's throat while punching her at the same time. Lydia struggles and fights back as much as she could while her strength withered away. As Lydia collapses to the floor, blood pooling beneath her, she remembers her childhood. Her memories fade, but she keeps thinking to herself,
I fought to escape this life. I fought to build something safe, something human. But this curse always finds us. It laughs at our plans, our hopes, our trust. No one escapes.
Her hand twitches as she reaches for a hidden syringe, a last-ditch effort. Her vision blurs, but she injects Daniel with a suppressant shot. For a moment, she feels the curse within her awaken, her own form beginning to twist. With her last ounce of strength, she lashes out, almost roaring as she strikes Daniel's chest with the base of the shattered vase. He tries to move, and again she hits him on his head with the base of the shattered vase. Daniel collapses, shocked and defeated, bleeding profusely from the gash on his head from the strike with the vase by Lydia. Everything seems to fade, and the room falls silent. All over the house is the wreckage of shattered glass, bloodstains, and the broken vase. Lydia, battered and bloodied, stumbles out the front door as the first rays of sunlight pierce the horizon. Eli's nowhere to be found. He's only a kid. What could he have done to help? Well, he actually did something right. Luckily, he had called the police while Lydia and Daniel were fighting and being bloodied. As Lydia crawls and stumbles out the front door, the police had arrived. Immediately, they help her to safety. Asking her if anyone was in the house, she responds saying, I don't know if he's alive. Then the police go into the house, call for the EMT to try resuscitate Daniel. At this point, he has lost so much blood and is grasping for life. In the end, we are all beasts under the curse's grasp. Some choose it, others fight it, and some, like Lydia, are cursed to walk the line between. The police and the EMT move Daniel's almost lifeless body onto a stretcher and cart him away to the ambulance, while Lydia looks on in horror and tears as she is taken away to another ambulance, covered in blankets and being attended to by other health workers. Do you believe in curses? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more chilling tales.